The piece I have chosen to analyze today is called Undine. It's a flute sonata by Karl Reineck. Karl Reineck was a German composer, conductor, and performer. During the time of this sonata, which was somewhere between 1882 and 1885, Reineck was a faculty member at the Leipzig Conservatory and was also conductor of the Gewandhaus Orchestra. One of my sources has stated that he dedicated the song to Wilhelm Bartsch, who was principal flutist in the orchestra and a fellow professor at the conservatory. The story behind this song was inspired by a German legend, which was turned into an 1811 novella. It is rumored that this story could be the inspiration behind The Little Mermaid by Hans Christian Andersen. Undine is the story of a water nymph who had to marry a man in order to gain a soul. However, when he is unfaithful, she is forced to curse him, so if he falls asleep, he dies. The first movement of this piece discusses her underwater time and the beginning of her desire for her soul. The second movement is where she goes to land and is then raised as a child by a fisherman and his wife. This is where the story begins to have some discrepancies, however, depending on the sources found. The third and fourth movements have to deal with her falling in love, marrying, finding her husband unfaithful, and placing the curse upon him. However, I chose to focus only on the first two movements. The first movement is in sonata allegro form, and it begins with an exposition. This exposition is in G major and is broken up into theme 1, theme 2, and a closing. The first theme is seen in two parts, an A and A prime. The second theme is also seen in two parts, having a B and then a C section, which is made up of the piano. This is followed by the close. This opening theme is light and moving. As a lifelong swimmer, it indeed brings about the feel and emotion that comes from gliding along underwater, and this fits into the idea of introducing Undine. The ornamentation of the different themes showcases the flute's smooth tone. In addition to this, as the listener progresses through the movements, the different use of keys and accidentals, as well as the range of notes, further proves this piece was written for a master performer. We will now listen to a little of the opening. The closing material heard before the development features 16th note runs. These 16th notes are seen throughout the movements and provide a sense of motion, representing the water theme. The developmental section begins similarly to the beginning, but starts on the 7th of the scale using larger leaps than in the first theme. This quickly changes to the 16th note water theme. Although it begins in G major, it changes frequently, going to E and then B major before returning to G in the recapitulation. Here's a section from the middle of the development. In the recapitulation section, we see the return of the first theme music go from G back to E major in the second theme and then closes in G major. Here is this final theme. The second movement of this piece is in rondo form, represented on the second half of this graph. It is meant to represent the childish antics of Undine. This rondo is in B minor and has an A, B, A, C, A pattern, with each section divided into two parts. The A sections of this piece feature fast leaping 16th notes, representing Undine's mischievousness. The rhythms also bring a sense of syncopation, heightening the mood. It is also important to note the call and response between the piano and flute in the A sections, adding yet another layer. Here is this first A section. The B section of this song features the piano and changes the mood to a more relaxed yet driven feel. The A section brings the return of Undine's childish antics, and then following we have the C section. The C section of this piece represents her calmer, more loving nature, luring her adoptive parents into a false sense of peace before Undine once again resumes the chase. This section switches to B major, and a hemiola effect is created between the flute and piano. Here is that section. Finally, Undine leads the listener back into the final A section, which is once again in B minor, to end and round out the movement. This is the conclusion of my piece. I hope you enjoyed listening and are now inspired to spend 20 magical minutes of your time listening to the full sonata. You won't regret it.